Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you in part by Mays Sandwich Shop, serving delicious hometown favorites to the West Lawn community since 1947. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, bringing you the latest news and commentary on baseball.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Hockey.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup.
College football.
The Big Ten championship lies on a measurement.
Did he get it? No! He didn't get it! Penn State holds!
They brought back the fun, they brought back the excitement, and now they've brought back a Big Ten championship. The Penn State Nittany Lions are Big Ten champions.
And the NFL.
He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback!
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 236th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me, my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We mentioned last week, it's that time of year for us, so I'm glad to keep the ball rolling tonight.
Yeah, we are full on football 100%. We started our 2017 NFL preview last Monday, talking about the NFC West. Here we are, ready to talk about the AFC West tonight. And football for me is in full swing, really for you too. We are going to our voluntary throw-around sessions with our middle school football team. I was just up at the high school most of the day on Thursday for the first 7-on-7 session of the 2017 Pennsylvania high school football schedule. A lot of the schedules have been finalized, camp dates are set, and we know that in just over a month, NFL teams will be reporting for training camp.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Crazier to think that we won't be back together to talk NFL for a month because of vacations and things like that. Yeah. So now I will be here next.
I guess when I said it's that time,
it means it
applied in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I will be back next week. I don't know who will be my co-host, but I will be talking with whoever joins me, continuing the NFL preview, talking NFC South. And we will get Justin's input probably via email to read to you all before I give you my picks for what's going to happen with a division that probably when you first hear NFC South, immediately you think of one team, but that division has a lot of history of turnover and quick turnover and a lot of, up until I guess recently, and of course, but last year it happened where a team that didn't win the year before, took it over.
Yeah.
But NFC South has been the NFC representative in the Super Bowl the last 2 years. Could it be another team? Could a team jump into the scene, steal the show, and become the third straight team to represent the NFC South?
It's interesting because I know that's not the division we're focusing on tonight, but when you look at it, like in a division, like I feel like that division is primed for someone who is maybe a little off the radar last year, at least by the end of the year, to kind of make a run. Not to get into that too much, but we can talk about that later on. But.
So we are continuing our trek through the NFL divisions each week throughout the summer. Up this week, though, we're staying out west, but we're jumping to the AFC, and we're going to start with. We'll probably start with, I guess, fourth place. That seems to be what we were doing. Now, last year, it went worst to first was the San Diego Chargers, the Denver Broncos, After winning it, I think 3 of the last 4 or 4 out of the last 5 years, Denver finished third. The Oakland Raiders represented the AFC as one of the wild card teams, and then the Chiefs won the division in 2016. But what's gonna happen in 2017? Well,
this is an interesting division.
This is an interesting division because honestly, I don't think the team that finished last, the Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers, are awful like some of the teams we discussed last week. I definitely think they're better than the 49ers and the Rams.
I don't think it's... Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's because the end of my thought.
I don't think it's likely that they win the division by any stretch, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But I wouldn't give them like a 0% chance. There are very few teams that give 0%, but let's say like 10% chance. Would I give them a 10% chance to win the division? Honestly, maybe, because they were really close on a bunch of games last year to winning.
Well,
and I feel like they maybe improved. But here's the thing, like, when you talk about improvements, it's all relative. Like the Browns, all right? They'll go extremes. The Browns, there's a lot of room for improvement, right? There's lots of room for improvement on the Chargers, especially if you look at the record. But when you look at the individual games, it came down to possessions. Didn't they hold the possessions like... They held the lead with like 2 minutes left or something because they had that crazy stat where like they were a playoff team if games were
3 quarters
and
like
13 minutes long or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this is what happened. They started off the season with an overtime loss to the Chiefs, who, like I said, went on to win the division.
Yeah.
Then they beat up on the Jaguars
on the road at Kansas City.
Right, at Kansas City, which is a tough place to play. Right. Arrowhead. Then they lost to the Colts by 4. They lost to the Saints by 1. They lost to the Raiders, AFC wildcard, by 3. They then beat the Broncos and beat the Falcons in overtime.
In Atlanta.
They lost to the Broncos by 8. They beat the Titans by 8, who the Titans were pushing for a wild card. They lost to the Dolphins, again, only by a touchdown. They beat the Texans by 8, again, a playoff team.
Right.
Then they lost their final 5 games by 7, 12, 3, 3, and 10. So if you remember all those scores, if I said them all, they only lost 2 games of the 11 by 10 or more points all year.
Right.
So they essentially, there was a game or two that was 8, but they're essentially within a touchdown in every game that they lost, save for 2.
Right, exactly. And you look at, it was brutal. Like, so to kind of reset on that, I think offensively, I think they're better. I think they'll get, they got a lot more out of the running back I forget his name. But they got more out of him, especially early in the season, than they did his rookie year.
Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon. So he had a better year, kind of tailed off, but the team did too, right? But didn't they pick 2 big-time wide receivers? Didn't they pick up some?
They added Travis Benjamin, which is a big addition. They have Keenan Allen coming back.
They drafted Mike Williams. They drafted
Mike Williams, who I think is actually fighting an injury at the moment.
Yeah, no, he is.
And they also have Dentrell Inman, who's no slouch. But so if Allen stays healthy, you add Benjamin, a deep threat, you have Inman, and then you add Mike Williams.
Right.
All of a sudden, that offense looks a little bit different.
So when you have Phillip Rivers, who is going to get back there and sling it all over the field, I feel like that could help Melvin Gordon and the running game. It's hard to see them winning this division, in my opinion, because I think this division has some really good teams. But I think they're definitely improved over last year. They won 5 games last year. They went 5-11. I probably put them at, honestly, I put them at like 7 or 8 wins, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won more than that. It would. Yeah. I don't know that they're going to win more than that. I know they were able to sign. They didn't have to use the franchise tag. They were able to sign the guy to an extension. They used it, but got the extension there.
I think, you're talking about a new coach. Anthony Lynn comes in from the Bills.
That's right. So
Gus Bradley is now their defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of change going on, but with what they had last year, coming back with the change in scheme, the change in location.
Yeah,
I kind of like the Chargers.
yeah,
And
I think
like you said,
it's going to be interesting to see. Like, and it can be really tough to do it early on to get the thing rolling because there's virtually everything except Phillip Rivers is going to be different for this team this year. You know, like, and I don't mean that as in there's a lot of turnover. Just like you said, new stadium, new practice facility, new coaching staff, new, everything's new. A lot of the players are living in a new place. Like, just lots of new things this year. But if they can get things going in the right direction and they can get some momentum in LA, that could be really interesting to have.
Definitely
to have that momentum, especially because they talk about it. So you have the Rams are in LA and they're using the Coliseum, right? They're playing at the Coliseum, which seats like 90,000 people. Could seat more if they wanted to, right? And then you have these guys who are playing, I believe, at the home of the LA Galaxy, which is the MLS team. So it seats probably like 45,000,
27,000.
Okay, I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. So here's the thing: 27,000, and they're concerned that they're not going to be able to fill that stadium. It's going to be interesting because also we touched on this. Maybe I was a different conversation, but like, no, it was last week. We were talking about Sam Darnold. Like, the hype around USC this year, I think, is going to reach some of those levels it hasn't been for a little while. That could hurt the NFL teams a little bit. We're getting way out of here, but I just, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Chargers do really well. But I'm pegging them 7 to 8 wins because I think they're better than last year. But it is. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Can they protect Phillip Rivers, who's old, and can the defense play well? Gus Bradley has a fairly good record
as a defensive coordinator, at least.
Right, exactly. And so that's where you would expect him to be able to maybe thrive. A new system there. They've got talent on defense. We'll have to wait and see, but. You know what? I'm going to go 8. I'm going to put him at 8 wins.
That's
what
3-game improvement.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for the Chargers is the offensive line, which we talked about last week, I believe, with the Seahawks and the Rams.
Yeah. And
you mentioned Melvin Gordon. Well, he kind of trailed off at the end. The Chargers are undergoing another offensive line overhaul. King Dunlap and DJ Fluker are gone. They brought in Russell Okung, who was with the Seahawks for a while, and then went to Denver. They're expecting more from Max Turk, Matt Slauson, and they drafted Forrest Lamp, who was a great get in the second round out of Western Kentucky. They also added Dan Feeney and Sam Tevy in the draft as well, and we already mentioned Mike Williams, the wide receiver from Clemson. That's a big get as well. So I think if their line is set up to pound the rock and give Melvin Gordon and besides Gordon, they completely redid their running backs. They brought in Kenjon Barner from the Eagles. They re-signed Brandon Oliver. They brought in Andre Williams, and I think there was another name too that I saw was added or swapped out, they lost a bunch. They lost Danny Woodhead, Dexter McCluster, and Ronnie Hillman.
See, I probably give him too much credit, but I feel like Kenyon Barner can fill a little bit of that Danny Woodhead role.
And Woodhead missed most of the last year.
Right. Here's the thing. I feel like a lot more people would feel like he's going to fill the Dexter McCluster role.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but I think a duo of Gordon and Oliver with Barner as the other guy. I mean, even if they carry 4 running backs now, because they'll probably keep Derek Watt, who's listed as the fullback. Andre Williams is also another guy that has had his moments with the Giants.
Yeah. So, but can they give them any room/time?
It comes down to the offensive
because
line.
They've got the weapons at the skill positions. So, it'll be interesting.
And that's ignoring the defense, who obviously had their issues holding on to leads last year. Yeah. But with Gus Bradley coming in and Anthony Lynn having a different demeanor.
When you look at some of those scores from last year too, a lot of those games they give up 21 points or less. In the NFL, I always say if you hold a team 20 or less, you need to win the game.
Yeah.
But let's look.
So they gave up 33
Right, in overtime.
They gave up 14-1.
Right.
They gave up 26. They
Right.
gave up 35. They gave up 34.
Okay.
But then the win, they gave up 13. Then they gave up 30 to the Falcons and won.
Right.
Then they gave up 27. They gave up 35 but won. They gave up 31.
Yeah, so
So-
I guess it was the Browns and the Raiders loss that stuck out because those were like the last two of the last three that
Right.
we had gone through. They gave up 19 to the Raiders and lost, and they gave up 20 to the Browns and lost. Those,
Yeah,
now
I'd say-
that's not a huge. It's the difference between being 5-11 and 7-9. So you're still bad.
The only time they lost and didn't allow more than 21 was Raiders-Browns back-to-back,
Right.
18th and 24th.
And that's kind of the nail in the coffin of the season too, because they were 5-8 going in with outside chances, of salvaging that 500 season. You never know what happens. Then you lose to the Raiders in a heartbreaker, and then you lose to the Browns, which means you were ready to golf, I guess. So
So, obviously, defense needs to step up, and I think they will. If the offensive line comes together and they stick with the running game and let Philip Rivers do what he can do, he's a very good quarterback. And we talked about the additions on offense at receiver. There's some potential there. So the Chargers, who were last in 2016, 5-11, Justin says 8-8. I'm going to join him there. I think 7-9 is a very distinct possibility. And if things go really right in Los Angeles for them, I think they could get to 10.
yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me. I shouldn't say it would surprise me a little bit. It wouldn't. I wouldn't rule it out though, because they were so close in a number of games last year. But at the same time, like if it goes bad, it could go bad in a hurry. Like you've got all this new stuff going on. It could go bad quick. So I think there's a very, very fine line that they're walking coming out of a season where they had a lot of the breaks go the wrong way. Like they had so many of those games that could go either way, didn't go their way last year. That's why I think a quote-unquote quick start would be key for them this year, because if they lose like 2 out of the last 3 in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter again, all of a sudden that's all everyone's going to be talking about. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whereas if they win some of those, they'll be talking about how they bucked that trend. They're good to go, all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But
I think 7-9 is realistic. I think we're both staying 8-8. What we didn't say is that fourth place, because honestly, I need to go through the other teams. I think
I agree, and I don't think it's going to be fourth place for me.
Let's move on to the third place team from last year, which was the Denver Broncos. They finished 9-7. They kind of got off to a great start. They were undefeated, 4-0. They dropped a couple of games to the Falcons and rival Chargers before rebounding and winning 3 of their next 4, with their only loss to the Raiders, and they're 7-3 at their bye. Well, they went 2-4 over the end of the season, and only really winning one meaningful game against the Jaguars. They lost their other big ones against the Chiefs, Titans, Patriots, and Chiefs again. Now, they did beat the Oakland Raiders 24-6 on January 1st, but I think the Chiefs may have had the division wrapped up, and the Raiders knew that they were the wild card.
They may have. That might have been like a time of the day game too. Like I don't even know.
Is that the game that Derek Carr got injured in?
No, I
it
feel
was earlier than that.
because that's the game Matt McGloin got injured in, isn't it?
Yeah, you're
I
right.
think it is.
So, I mean, really, the Broncos just struggled down the stretch. Basically, from Thanksgiving on, the Broncos were a mess, only beating the Jaguars and a Raiders team that I don't think had much to play for anymore. I could be wrong on that, but I think they already knew that the Chiefs had blocked up the division, that the Raiders had the wild card, so I really think it made no difference what happened in that game, which was in Denver as well. And, well, a little bit of deja vu as we get ready to look ahead at 2017, because what's going on at the quarterback position? Does anyone know?
No.
That's a problem. So say what you will for the end of the Peyton Manning era, you knew what you were getting out of him, and he started on fire when he moved there in was it 2012, his first year there, and it dwindled each year after that, but it ended with a Super Bowl title. So there's not a lot you can say about that. It looks like they made a good decision with Osweiler. But then again, what they have now, isn't there much of a difference?
Right, and when you look at it,
They didn't get a veteran.
No.
And they didn't draft anyone high. They made Chad Kelly Mr. Irrelevant with the 253rd pick in the draft.
Yes, and he probably did that because he's friends with Jim Kelly and wanted to do him a favor.
So that is Jim Kelly, the famous
in reality,
Buffalo Bills quarterback.
Isn't necessarily a favor to be drafted there.
Chad Kelly actually played at Red Lion High School for a while.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
Yeah,
when
I told Justin that, he had no idea. He didn't realize that was the case. He didn't finish there, but
he played at a number of.
He played at a number of high schools
places.
And colleges.
Yeah.
And last we knew, I believe, was still recovering from an arm injury.
Yeah, broke his arm, I think.
Yeah. So he's on the roster. Who knows what's going on with him? Another guy on the roster I've never heard of, Kyle Slaughter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do not know who that is. And it's so bad that Wikipedia doesn't even know who he is. The other two are somebody
just altered it and put their name in there, and Wikipedia can't confirm or deny.
And no one knows, is it true or not? So they're going with Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch was drafted in the first round in 2016. He played sparingly last year. Siemian was kind of the guy, but they bounced around back and forth. Neither of them really took hold of the game. Siemian was kind of the game manager. He's the guy that wasn't going to do a lot to win you games.
Northeastern, Northwestern.
Northwestern,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think Northeastern has a football team,
no,
so that would be pretty amazing if it came out of there.
So, but, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Lynch or Siemian? I would guess it's Siemian.
You drafted Paxton Lynch in the first round, didn't you?
Yeah.
So, at some point, it's going to be him.
Traded up for him, I believe.
It's going to be him, yeah. So, okay, I'll cut to the chase. I think this team's worse this year than they were last year.
I agree. That's why I said
I'm going to put them 6 or 7 wins.
We started with the Chargers, and then I was thinking, you know what? I actually think the Broncos might be the last place team. I
don't think they're awful. I don't think they're drafted number 1 next year, which would help them because then they could solve that quarterback issue. But this is a team that got old in a hurry.
Yeah.
All over the place. Like, offensive line isn't what it needs to be for a young team. I
don't see, like, the Chargers, I think, got better in multiple facets.
Right. They have, don't get me wrong, their defense will still be fine, but like you kind of talked with the Seahawks about how a top 5 defense is great. Most teams would take that, every season. But when you were one of the best and you drop to 5th, then all of a sudden, that makes it sound like I didn't mean that's one of the best. But you know what I mean? When there's still a drop-off, then more of those deficiencies on the other side of the ball get exposed. And I feel like that's what's going to happen here. I think they'll have a top 10 defense. I think they're going to have a bottom third offense. So
bottom third, they could be.
Yeah, I meant 20 or lower. They're probably more likely to be 25 or lower.
I think at least 20 or lower. Yeah, I was thinking 25 or lower. So,
right. So if you go 25 or lower, you absolutely need to be probably top 3 defense to like be right around that 8-9 wins mark. And I don't think they're. I think they're probably like the 5 to 7th ranked defense, in my opinion.
And it's a quarterback league, so we know that they don't have a quarterback yet. Right. They have a quarterback that's probably also in the bottom third.
Right. So if you don't have a quarterback, that wipes out a lot of the effectiveness of any of your wide receivers.
Your running backs are rotational and haven't really stood up. C.J. Anderson, Devontae Booker, Jamal Charles, all good names.
Right.
One of them's oft injured at the downside of his career. C.J. Anderson and Devontae Booker are similar backs.
Right. I think Jake Butt could be a great pick for them.
But is it
next
this year?
Right.
Right. I mean, now Virgil Green and Jeff Heuerman are no slouches, but they're also not. They're not guys in their prime that have. I think
Jake Butt can be a great NFL tight end. I just think he's got the athleticism
and size. He's got a year away, though.
No, I know. I just mean, like, I think that's the attitude here, though. I think they're going to kind of ride out some contracts here, try and see what they've got with some young guys and start building. So I honestly, I'm probably going to go 6 wins because I think it goes south. Like, I think they have the talent to get 7 or 8 on defense. If defense is playing at the top notch.
Right.
But I think the offense is going to do it. And like in Seattle, there can be some tension here when the offense is not just
you got
mediocre, but when they're bad. When it's one thing to have a mediocre offense because they're not going to lose it for you, but they might win it for you occasionally. They just need to not lose it. Well, this offense, I think, could lose you some games. Like, that's basically where I think they're at right now. I think this offense could lose you 1 or 2 games this year. And that gets frustrating if you're in a defense that is trying to win you. You know, if you have a defense that could win you 2 or 3 games, and then they have to try and win you 2 or 3 more because your offense is that bad. So I think they're going to be at 6 wins. That's where I'm going to put them, and in 4th place in the division.
Yeah, I think they have an issue at the offensive line, which has kind of been a theme. Now, they attempted to rectify that by drafting Garrett Bowles in the first round. I believe it was the first round, or did they trade out and was that in the second? No, it was in the first round. It was pick 20. But, you know, they brought in Ronald Leary. They got McGovern, Sombrello, Stevenson, Turner, Medic Watson. But they just have had issues there the last few years. I like the defensive line. They've got some rush linebackers in Miller and Ray. I know some people are high on Brandon Marshall, the linebacker. They've had some turnover there.
Right. That's why, like, on defense, I think they could be all right. But
right, because they have Talib, Roby, and Harris at cornerback.
Right.
Then the safeties. I mean, they brought in T.J. Ward a few years ago.
It basically comes.
I think they've hit their peak.
Right. When I look at it, how many games do I think this offense scores more than 21 points?
Well, how many times did they score more than 20 points last year?
Well, now you're getting in.
Yeah, well,
if I would have answered that, you would have just been like...
I would have just ripped you apart, yeah. So they won by scoring 21, 34, 29, 27. So then they scored 16, 13.
Then they were back up.
27, 27, 20, 25, 27.
Made it to week 12 before they bucked the trend.
But then look at the end of the year. 20, which was a win.
Right.
10, 3, 10, and then 24 in a meaningless game.
Right. Yeah. So, like...
They were an average offense, but that's buoyed by the first half of the season. First 4 games, really. 6 of the first...
Right, where they played the Panthers, who weren't what they were the year before. The Colts, who weren't that good. The Bengals, who weren't that good. Like...
The Bucks, who weren't that good.
Right, so, like...
Then they lost to the Falcons, lost to the Chargers. They beat the Texans, beat the Chargers, lost to the Raiders, beat the Saints.
Yeah. So, yeah, they didn't really win an impressive game after October. So
they were nobodies from Thanksgiving on.
Yeah, so because of that...
So, I mean, 9-7 last year? I think they're taking a step back, like you said.
Yeah.
Did you say 6-10?
Yeah, I'm going to say 6-10.
I'll go 7-9, but I do think they're the 4th. So I'll say Broncos 7-9, Chargers 8-8. And I do want to point out, I believe last year when we previewed the 2016 season, I said I chose Denver to finish, I believe, 3rd when we did this.
Yeah.
I remember very early last year, over a year ago, it was in April when I did a show with my dad, I picked the Raiders to win the division, which they didn't do, but they came awfully close.
They could have.
And I believe I had the Chiefs as the wild card. Now, it could have been the Chargers. I may be wrong on that. I don't remember. But I know I was high on the Raiders, and I was down on the Broncos. And my Uncle Rich said, how can you not take the Broncos to win that division? I remember that from last year. So I'm putting that out there. I was definitely right on the Broncos, for sure. And now both of us believe that they're going to take even a farther step back this year. So... Do you think...
I think this year is going to be the year where they start to rebuild. Meaning, like, where they enter the mode of, like, all right, we can't just add a piece here, add a piece there. I think this is the year where they start to clean house.
Right. So, they already did that a little bit on the coaching staff, though, because Gary Kubiak retired. Says it was due to health reasons. And they brought in Vance Joseph, who was with the Bengals for a while, then in Miami for a few years. He's the new head coach. I was not disappointed to see him leave because I did not like the way he ran the Dolphins defense.
Oh, sorry.
Leave Miami.
I thought you were talking about Kubiak. I'm like, I didn't know you had strong feelings about Kubiak.
No.
I understand.
Was not disappointed that Vance Joseph
right.
was the guy who got the Denver
I remember
job.
When that news broke, your reaction was not one of bitter disappointment,
right?
Should I say?
Positive, they brought back Mike McCoy as the offensive coordinator, who was in Denver for a number of years before he got the Chargers job. We know what happened there. So, also another change in coaching staff. Sometimes that's a good thing for win and loss. Other times it's not. I don't know much about their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, but Draft-wise, we talk about they took the offensive tackle early. We like the Jake Butts pick in the 5th round.
I thought the DeMarcus Walker pick isn't a bad pick either. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm not the draft analyst here, but from the times I watched Florida State, I thought he was one of their better defensive linemen. So
yeah, I guess
I think that could be.
I mean, he's probably going to be. I mean, they do like that.
I know
3-4 under or 4-3 over,
right.
whatever you want to call it. So they're using a big body at defensive end. They already had Crick, Gotsis, and Wolf.
Right.
Like, you only need 2.
Right.
Now you added another one in the 2nd round when you could need more help on the offensive line,
help.
another
right.
linebacker, another receiver maybe. I mean, unless you're enamored with Benny Fowler. Cody Latimer is a bit of a bust.
Or a quarterback.
Or a quarterback. So, I don't know.
My opinion, you've got to go Trevor Siemian here unless Paxton Lynch outright just wins the job because
right.
I feel like Trevor Siemian can at least, and he showed this last year, he can make the right decisions, and that's what you need here. Unless you're just going to throw in the towel, but I think there's some defensive guys who are going to look for their way out. Like, Von Miller doesn't want to be around for a rebuild there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how all that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see a lot there that thrills me, and I think they're taking a step back. So I'll say 7-9. You said 6-10, and that's 4th place. Yep. So we had the Chargers about 8 to 9 wins.
Yeah.
All right. So
that's actually what pushed, because I bumped up from 7 to 8 with the Chargers. I went down from 7 to 6 on the Broncos.
All right, so up next, we're going to talk about the Raiders, who finished 2nd in the division last year, and I'll put it out here right away. I feel they're going to finish 2nd in the division this year.
I'm going with them to win the division this
year. Are you?
Yeah,
See, I'm not buying into it. I don't want to say it was a flash in the pan because obviously I haven't finished 2nd.
I think it was.
If I have the Chargers winning 8 to 9, I know I have to have the Raiders at 9 to 10.
Right.
So that's where I'm going to slot the Raiders to be. Now last year they were 12-4, so
right.
I'll say 10 because
right.
I think they're still a very solid team. They're a nice young team, which is always good in the league. Now because they shouldn't have to worry about contracts for I think another year or 2. They brought in some nice pieces to help Derek Carr on offense in Jared Cook and Cordero Patterson. While he may not contribute a lot at wide receiver, we've heard the offensive coordinator say that they're going to try to get him more involved than he was in Minnesota. He's a great returner.
Well, and he can be great to take things off of some of the other guys who started out strong, but you know can. If you have another threat, a speedster threat, that can really help some of the other guys.
They didn't lose a whole lot that I think should really worry them. Latavius Murray, was their starting running back for a time. He went to Minnesota to replace Peterson. He's gone. Some pieces on defense, including Malcolm Smith, Nate Allen, and who's the other? DJ Hayden, who was a former first-round pick from a few years ago. Our boy Matt McGloin, Penn Stater, now in Philadelphia. They signed A.J. Manuel from the Bills to be the backup there. Michael Rivera is an interesting one that went to Jacksonville.
For the record, the Florida State coach, I can't think of his name right now.
Jimbo Fisher.
He nailed it with E.J. Manuel.
Well, so did we.
I know. But
it's like everyone could see that except the Bills. So, I mean, they lost some people, but, they also ended up adding Marshawn Lynch, who just, sat out a year and ended up now in Oakland. They're saying that he's been, really great to work with there. He's got people hyped up. You got Lynch and Carr, and then as Carr's healthy, you have Lynch and Tywan Jones, who's an absolute speed demon. DeAndre Washington had a good moment as backup last year as well. Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, adding Patterson to that group. I don't know if he'll be an every down player. It'd be nice to find someone to replace Holmes.
Right, but if he can be your other guy, if you can get something out of Crabtree and Amari Cooper can be really good.
Right. Well,
Cordell Patterson can help open it up for those guys.
Right, and if you try out Crabtree, Cooper, Patterson, and then Cook, at tight end.
Yeah.
You got a pretty good offensive weaponry there, and Clyde Welford's no slouch either. Their offensive line was actually one of their bigger points of being strong last year. Howard, Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Kelechi Osamili, Donald Penn. They had a good rotation of guys there, very strong. Rodney Hudson's one of my favorites. He's a guy one of the Dolphins drafted a few years ago now out of Florida State. I believe they got him. Was he a second rounder?
I don't know.
I want to say, what year was he drafted? 2011. Okay. So he was taken in 2011.
Second pick. Second
rounder for
pick.
the Chiefs. And he spent 4 years there and came over to the Raiders in 2015. He was a guy that I was really high on. I was hoping Miami would take him. But not the case. So offense, I think, looks stupendous. With adding Marshawn Lynch in the fold, Cordell Patterson
arrested
to change
Marshawn Lynch.
Jared Cook. Defense at times could be
and arrested
dominant.
And motivated Marshawn Lynch.
Right. But also at times they kind of disappear. Khalil Mack is an absolute beast. People thought he would be when he was taken so early in the draft 3 or 4 years ago.
Is he from Buffalo?
Yeah, University of Buffalo. Yeah, he was drafted 5th overall in 2014. So he is entering his prime, and he already has been one heck of a player for the Raiders. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler and first teamer, and he was the player of the year defensively last year. But, what else is there? Bruce Irvin, Jelani Jenkins. Defensively, we seem to let it go a few of their guys. Now, they added Garyon Conley, the Ohio State defensive back that was had some run-ins with the law that have since not amounted to anything.
I think they kind of dissolved.
It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. They had Carl Joseph was their early pick last year, I believe. Reggie Nelson, journeyman Sean Smith's coming back, had a down year last year. David Amerson. So they have some names. It's just, what are they going to do? Can they duplicate their success from a year ago? Offensively, I would want to say yes. They could even be better offensively this year. But I don't know. I'm just not sold. They lost to the Falcons, Chiefs again, and the Broncos.
Shouldn't have. I was thinking a different game. Never mind. You're right. So, and you look at some of them, like the losses. Now, okay, so the last loss was they were without Carr, right? And then without McGloin for most of that game. So they're sitting there, but their losses, they scored 13 points at Kansas City. They scored 10 points against Kansas City the first time, which is interesting because Kansas City won the division last year.
Yep.
And I won't say they destroyed them. They beat them by 16 and they beat them by 8. But, they held them to a total of 23 points in 2 games. Kansas City did. And they scored 28 against the Falcons. So, they scored 6 against the Broncos in that last game. But, again, that was without their car. You mentioned all this stuff. I think the offense does get better. I think the defense is about the same. I'm slotting them for 12 wins again. I think they're going to be at 12 wins. I think they win the division. I think the offense does take that step up. I think the defense may not be dynamic like the Broncos defense was, but I think the offense is going to start to make up for that. And I don't know that Cordell Patterson is kind of the piece, but I feel like somebody's going to step up to be a good third wide receiver there. If they can get something out of Crabtree, I think Amari Cooper really starts to come into his own this year.
12 wins last year. They won those 12 games by a combined 80 points. Do you know what that victory margin is?
No.
It's actually the Devils' number, 666, repeating. Now, I only pulled that up because I knew it was between 6 and 7. But it is 6.6 repeating, so that could be a red flag there.
It's a black hole. I can't be surprised.
Yeah, true. Maybe it's the opposite effect then. That's actually good. But no, I think it's actually a negative thing because they're actually the inverse Chargers. So the Chargers we saw go 5-11 last year and lose a whole bunch of games by a touchdown or less. They were the opposite. They only won, I think, was it 2 games by more than a touchdown. They beat the Jaguars in Week 7, 33-16. They beat the Broncos in Week 9, 30-20. They beat the Bills in Week 13, 38-24. Okay, they beat the Colts by 8, but that's technically a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So there were 3 games that they won by more than 8 points. Their other 9 games were all 8 points or fewer, and actually 2 of the first 4 were by a point. So I just think they got lucky a bit last year. I'm not saying they're not a good team.
No, I
they're
understand.
a good team.
But like all the things that went against the Chargers, and we talked about
Went
how
right
that adds
for the
up. They went
Raiders.
right for the Raiders, right?
Now they did lose the Falcons by a touchdown, so obviously they're for real. They couldn't beat the Chiefs, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it this year either. So I'm going to go with the Raiders as a second place team. I'm going to say they're 10-6, a game better than the Chargers, and 3 games better than the Broncos.
Yeah, see, I think they are in first place at 12 wins because I think the Chiefs, segueing here, I don't think they've gotten better. Now, they were really good last year. They won the division over a 12-4 Raiders team. And they beat the Raiders twice. I just think you're going to have a quarterback situation there. I know Alex Smith is the guy to start. You drafted a guy in the first round. You moved up into the first round to take him at the 10th spot. I know there's talk that, he's not going to be ready right away. That's why they did it. Yeah, Alex Smith's not happy. He said it feels a lot like it did in San Francisco, where he did nothing but win and then got replaced by Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
I don't really blame him for that, but part of me is like, you couldn't score a touchdown in the playoffs last year to win that game. When you had how many chances against the Steelers? Well, I think it was the Steelers. They had countless chances to score. Actually, they did, and then they got the holding call on the 2-point conversion. But anyway, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I like the Chiefs. I think they're still going to be really good. I think they're going to be at like 10 or 11 wins, but I don't know what they did to get better per se. Like, they let Macklin go. I know they've had issues at wide receivers to begin with. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what the draft looked like for them, but I don't see.
Well, Mahomes was the big one.
Right, exactly. So then they didn't really have a like positionally. Like, I don't think they're gonna replace that. I don't know. I think they take a small step back. I'm probably gonna put them at 10 wins.
Okay,
I put them at 10 wins, and I
last year.
still think probably a playoff team. I haven't really gone through all that in my head yet, but I think they and the Chargers flip, or they and the Raiders flip.
I think their biggest issue might be on the defensive line. They let go 2 of their guys, and Jay Howard and Dontari Poe, but they did bring in a few guys to replace that talent. Primarily, I'm trying to figure out where he was then. He brought it, didn't he? Yeah, Benny Logan from the Eagles.
Yeah.
He's a new addition for them along the defensive line, as was Jarvis Jenkins, who actually I believe finished part of the year last year with the Chiefs. So, I don't know if there's much of a loss there, maybe a little bit. They have a couple young guys, though, that started to step up last year, and I think they're just going to continue to get better. One of them was their cornerback. Guy, when he was entering the league, there was questions about because of his issues at Washington, but Marcus Peters has become the guy, and what a guy to have out there. And then you also got Eric Berry back there, so they've got a strong
Eric Berry back
secondary.
there too.
And their linebackers, while they're aging a bit, we love our Tamba Hali and Justin Houston, Derek Johnson. They also have Ray McWilson, Frank Zombo, and D Ford. So I think they've got the guys there. One of these years it is going to fall apart because you have the Alex Smith situation. You have some older linebackers,
right.
But I don't know. For this year, something was just telling me that I still think they're going to get it done. Andy Reid is just consistently good.
You're right.
Like, his teams are just good. They'll have bumps in the road every so often, and their critics will say, well, he's never gotten over the hump, which, true, but I'm saying this year I still think it's the Chiefs to lose. Alex Smith is proven quarterback.
He made it to Super Bowl where he lost to a cheating Pats team, so, I mean, what more do you want?
Losing Jamal Charles is nothing. They barely used him the last, 3 out of the last 4 years. I think he's missed most of the season anyways. Spencer Ware and Charkandrick West are great. They added C.J. Spiller, who had his issues in New Orleans and never got going to his potential in Buffalo, but he's still, he's still a speedy threat. Tyreek Hill, despite his off-the-field issues, is one of the great breakthroughs last year, and they expect to feature him even more this year.
Right.
Not a lot else at wide receiver. You mentioned they let go of Macklin, which was a surprise.
Right.
But I just think Alex.
They have Travis Kelce, who, when healthy, is incredible.
Right. And they actually added Orson Charles and Gavin Escobar. So
So what are they going to do? Line those guys up at wide receiver and just not worry about.
They're a run first team, and they have the line to do it. That's the thing.
No, I understand, but I honestly don't. When I look at comparing them to the Raiders, I know they held the Raiders in check last year, but I think the Raiders' offense gets better. And so I think the Raiders' offense is significantly better than the Chiefs' offense. And I think the defense, while the Chiefs have the significantly better defense, I think the gap is closer on defense than it is on offense. I think the Raiders are going to open that gap on offense this year.
Well,
we'll see, because you could be right about the Raiders being the flash in the pan. I think you're going to get Marshawn Lynch and some of those guys playing really well early on, and you're going to get this whole, and outside of Oakland, people aren't going to get it, but I think you're going to get this whole we're playing for Oakland kind of thing. I think that's going to snowball into this story. That is going to be a positive story for them. Now, it could go really bad in Oakland in a hurry if that backfires, because they talked about, there are people, radio guys, saying how if it goes south there, they need to have a plan to play their rest of their home games somewhere else this year, because it could go that bad in Oakland. I just think the Chiefs, I think this is one of those years where it's an Andy Reid team that takes a step back, not collapses to a 4-win team, but I think this is one of those years where he wins 9 or 10. I'm going to put him at 10 instead of the 12 or 13 like his teams sometimes can.
And the schedule,
which then leads to the, I think if they're hovering around 500, people are halfway through the season. Alex Smith, the offense aren't putting up crazy numbers. Do we put the kid in? Do we put Mahomes in? Do we put him in? Because if he's the guy in the future, we get the cap space if we let go of, Smith next year, that kind of stuff. I'd say, I don't know.
Looking at the schedule,
Andy Reid hasn't handled the quarterback situations the greatest in the past.
I think the schedule favors your expectations of 9 to 10 because first 9
they
weeks
don't have
are
the advantage
brutal.
because they lost. Or they won the division, so that hurts them.
Really, first 11 weeks are brutal, and there's one bye in there because look, they start at New England to kick off the season, literal first game.
Loss.
Then they host the Eagles,
a win.
They go to the Chargers, who we expect to be better. Now they beat them twice last year,
but that has to be a win.
It has to be a win, right?
But then they
have the Redskins, who we haven't done the NFC East yet, but we think they're going to be decent.
Solid, yeah.
That's not a pushover. They're at Houston.
Oh, when the rookie quarterback who.
Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, he's going to be the quarterback by the time this game happens.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think he starts.
Right, so do I. I know O'Brien's kind of sandbagging that a little bit, but that's O'Brien. He's Belichick's school there. But my point is, by October 8th, I feel like he's got his feet wet. He's starting to pick up on things here. So, I like that Deshaun Watson fit in Houston.
Patriots loss. Eagles, I'll say push. I'll say probable win.
I'll say a win because it's in Kansas City, right?
At Chargers, that has to be a win.
Yep.
But then Redskins, Texans, Steelers, Raiders, Broncos, Cowboys, bye, Giants are the first 11 weeks of the season.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Then they finish. They have the Bills and the Jets, which have to be wins, before having the Raiders, Chargers, Dolphins, and Broncos.
Yeah, Chargers, Dolphins, Broncos, the end. This isn't a knock.
Chargers, we expect to be
They're
better.
going to need to win.
Dolphins
they're going
should
to
be the
have to win
second-best
2
team
or
in the
3 of
East.
those. To win the division,
Now,
I think they have to win all 3 of those.
What's working in their favor is 4 of their last 5 are at home. Well, sorry.
Yeah.
4 or 5 from week 12 to 16 are at home, and then they finish, though, at Denver.
Right.
So, Kansas City, 12-4 last year. I think they go 10 or 11, get the tiebreaker with Oakland if they win 10. I still think that they're the team to beat. I could see this blowing up my face and Oakland's offense just clicking and them running away with it. I'm getting to 12 wins, but something just tells me to not overlook the Chiefs.
No, and don't get me wrong. I'd love to see Andy do it. But I don't know. I think that Oakland story is going to turn into something this year. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
Be interesting. I was always, for a long time, maybe a decade ago and earlier, because they were irrelevant, essentially. I hated the Raiders. They were one of the teams that I absolutely despised.
Talked about that.
And now they're just a team, like, I'm kind of like, whatever.
Just to be clear, like, we talk about not liking teams, stuff like that.
There's ebb and flow.
I am much more likely, I feel like, of the two of us, to really just have an uncontrolled hatred for a team than you are. Yours are far and few between, but when you have them, it is all out.
Yeah.
It is all out.
Yeah. Well, the Raiders they're on the downswing now. They were at a peak at one point, when probably from like junior high, high school, and early college, but then they kind of became irrelevant, and it was like, why hate them? Like, what's the point?
So you're not a Rich Gannon fan, is what you're saying.
I don't know what it was.
Just kidding.
There was history with the Dolphins, though. So I mean,
I get it. Yeah.
So there's our AFC West predictions. We're together on 4-3. We had Broncos at 4, Chargers at 3. I went Raiders at 2, Chiefs at 1, which, that's a bad omen for me, because that's exactly how it was last year at the top. I'm talking, and at least 50% of playoff teams there's overturned each year, and have we done that at all yet? No. Seahawks and Chiefs for me, Seahawks and Raiders for you. Those are all playoff teams from last year. So we're off to a start that might come back to bite us. We're only 2 divisions in, but that's how we feel. So, that's the AFC West. So 2 down and 6 to go. Again, NFC South next week with me and whoever I bring in here to join me. I don't know who it'll be, but we will have Justin's input as well. We'll get that out there so he can't have revisionist history and say, "Oh, that's exactly what I said would happen when we're in the holidays of 2017."
Yeah, check back in January for my NFC South picks.
For your predictions. We'll have a special show on New Year's Day, and he'll let us know how it's going to fare. So I think that about does it here, though. Do you have any shout-outs or mentions?
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah. Other than that, Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you. You too.
Happy Father's Day to my dad, to my father-in-law, to all of you fathers out there celebrating. A lot of you have had an impact on our lives, and we appreciate it. So we hope everyone had a wonderful day today.
Yeah.
My cousin Brian is celebrating a birthday tomorrow, and also, I feel like there was one recently that I wanted to mention, and now I forget what it was. So happy Father's Day and happy early birthday to my cousin Brian. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. This wraps up the 236th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Tune in every Sunday for the latest sports discussions from Joe and Justin. Each episode is available live
on Facebook Live
and can be downloaded or streamed on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can interact with Joe and Justin on Facebook and Twitter, and stay up to date with the guys at joemaysandjraff.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is part of the JMNJR Radio Network. For more info, visit jmnjrradio.com.